He'd love this. This would be great.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I went to Australia, and Dr. Rod Taylor took me down this little back road in the outback,
Yeah.
and like it's dark, it was night, and da da da, and then suddenly there's this big old kangaroo doing 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 in the middle of the road. I'm like, cool. I was, Americans were easily entertained.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think all Americans think that kangaroos just hop down the main road in Australia, but where I live, they literally do. Like every month or two, I have to slow down for either a kangaroo or a koala crossing the road. So
Here in southern United States, it's a deer crossing, and they actually have a sign, deer crossing. You guys probably have a kangaroo crossing sign.
We do, and koala crossing signs.
Oh, really? Yeah, the koala bear ones are interesting. But anyway, we could talk about American and Aussie differences all day long. But guys, that is Brett Hill, my friend Dr. Brett Hill. He has a brand new book I want you to know about. We're going to talk all about here today, called Rock Bottom, and the subtitle, How to Not Only Survive but Thrive Through Personal and Professional Stress. And Brett and I, like I said, have been really good friends for many years. I've spoken to your patient population. You are a chiropractor in Adelaide, Australia. What's the state?
South Australia.
In South Australia. So Adelaide, South Australia, kind of like I'm in Spartanburg, South Carolina, USA.
Yeah. But New York, that's the one that always gets me.
What's that?
New York, that's the one that always gets me.
Well, it's New York City in the state of New York. So
yeah. It took me ages to figure that out when I was a kid.
Why did they say it twice, Mommy? Yeah. Well, let's talk about rock bottom, because let's just start where everybody is this year. And where everybody is this crazy pandemic we've been through, and all the just crazy world events that have happened. You want to talk about stress? Forget people's personal and professional stress. That's a stress everybody in the world is feeling. And of course, it's manifesting in, your occupation of people having stiffer backs and not really feeling all that great. And it's manifesting in mental health types of issues, and unfortunately suicides and things like that. Stress can overwhelm you, which is why I love that you wrote this book, because at some point or another, everybody on the planet is going to feel like they hit rock bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you talk about that physical manifestation of stress. Like I just had a picture come up from me speaking on stage about and it must have been like 5 years ago now, and it was literally just after all this happened, and I was so skinny, like I was just so gaunt. And I just looked at it and I was like, wow, like it just took me right back to that place, and it's amazing how that can affect you. But yeah, look, right now, like you said, it is just affecting everybody, because everybody's affected so differently by what's happened this year. Like, I have people come in and see me in the practice, and some of them are so stressed out because they've lost their job or they've got no money coming in and all, And then there's others who are like, my work is nuts. Like, I'm so busy and there's so much going on, But I think the one big commonality that we've seen this year is just uncertainty. Like, there's so much uncertainty for everybody. They're like, what is going on? What happens next? What do I do now? What are the rules now? What am I supposed to do? What am I not supposed to do? What are the social etiquette? Like, just everything has just changed like that. And it's a big deal for people. We're so innately wired to be this kind of tribal nation that wants to fit in, and so when we get this uncertainty, we don't quite know where we belong. It's really unsettling for people.
Well, and think about it from your brain's perspective. It likes things calm, peaceful, knowing what's happening. And even now, and a lot of things happening in America, in California, especially, in different places. And I know in your country, Dan Andrews at the state over from you implemented some pretty nasty kind of lockdown types of measures that kept them locked up for a long time. They have to know that has ramifications on people's stress levels. And it's just unfortunate that all the uncertainty still exists and probably will for a little while. So what do you do in the midst of it is kind of the question we're trying to help people with here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said before, everyone deals with stress. We all have our own stresses. And I think this year it's almost like we all have stresses, but they're just different sorts, but ultimately, I guess the kind of the way back out of that, it can be quite common. There are some common themes I think that show up. And, I've been really lucky over the course of my sort of career that I've got to interview so many different people and hear so many different journeys and stories, whether it's, yourself, or it's like Rich Roll, or it's like Rob Wolf, or, I mean, many names that people would have heard on your show, no doubt, as well. And you just hear all these different stories and you start to sort of piece together common threads, and it's a bit like sort of all the old classics. If you go read the old classic like self-help books or personal development books or money books or whatever it is, you just see these kind of themes running through. And I think that's sort of, what we're able to see is that there is a theme to how you go about sort of getting yourself back on track. It is different for everybody. No two people are the same. No two people are in the same situation. No two people are going to deal with it the same. But there are some common sort of themes that you can use as a little bit of a roadmap to get you back on track, I reckon. And so, one of the things I talk about in the book, I like to talk about is kind of what I did wrong and then also kind of what worked for me as well in terms of trying to get myself back on track.
So you do an autopsy of what happened so that then you can prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, exactly. But you got to do the autopsy in the right way, because I'm great at doing autopsies. Like, I'm such an overthinker and I'm such an overanalyzer. And if you're not careful, that can get you into lots of trouble as well. You can really set yourself back and take yourself to a really dark place by just that over-analysis, that over-blaming, that over-complicating yourself, more than anything. I often say, in terms of my journey of sort of, getting divorced and separated and all the challenges that came with that, all the worst things that happened to me were things that I did to myself. And that's where you've got to be really careful with that analysis to make sure it's coming from the right place.
So guys, I neglected to tell you, Brett is a pretty big deal in Australia. You've got one of the top podcasts in Australia, at least in the health realm, called The Wellness Guys. I know you guys always make fun of me when I say The Wellness Guys.
Well, it's changed now, Jimmy. It's got a new name.
What's it called now?
It's called This Week in Wellness now.
This Week in Wellness. That's right. I've seen your logo out there on the Instagram. Sorry about that. But yes.
That's all right.
And Wellness used to be called Wellness Guys. Yeah, you can't make fun of me anymore because I can say This Week in Wellness.
Yeah, that'd be good at. I might use that. But you can't say The Wellness Guys when there's only one of you left, right? So that didn't change the name, right?
The Wellness Guy.
Yeah. Well, I think it is officially This Week in Wellness by The Wellness Guy. I think that's what's on my logo, I believe.
And see, there you go. That's called branding. Keep the old logo, start a new one, boom.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm gonna pull you up on Instagram so we can show people it's not The Wellness Guys. So I want you to tell your story about where you hit rock bottom, but there he is, you guys. Dr. Brett Hill over on Instagram. And yeah, there you are. This Week in Wellness, co-founder of the Wellness Couch, and on and on and on, Burnside Chiropractic, blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah,
dude, like, you did hit rock bottom. And I remember, because I think the last time I was in Australia was right around 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I came to speak at your clinic. I remember you had a big audience that night for me. And you were skinny. And I was like, whoa. So like, it's so funny. It's taboo to meddle and kind of ask people something going on, but I think everybody around those people knows something's going on, but they're afraid to say anything.
Yeah.
And that's part of this problem, is those people who are hitting rock bottom feel all alone. So let's talk about your story and then get into that feeling alone part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will. But before I do that, I'll say, just, if you're in that situation, just say it. Like, you don't have to delve right in, but just, how you going, mate? Is what we would say in Australia, but just, how are you going? Are you okay? You don't have to ask for specifics. You don't have to delve in. If they don't want to share the whole story, they don't have to. But just the fact that you asked makes the world of difference to people. So I just want to say that right up front. But yeah, for me, look, it was it was just my life got turned upside down in a moment. I was feeling pretty, the year before you came and saw me, you came to Australia. I think it was the year before or 2 years before, and everything was good. I was living in a beautiful house in the hills. I had a wife. I had 2 small children. I had my chiropractic practice, which was going really well. I was getting these awesome people come speak at our events, like Jimmy Moore coming over, packing the house out. And, I'd written a book. I was doing my podcast show. It was just like, everything was just going. Everything was on track, and the checklist of my life, I was just kind of ticking off goals, thinking this is great, And I've got a really good group of friends, so the social life was really good. And so I'd gone out one night with this group of friends. We play indoor cricket, which is, kind of like baseball, but indoors and too hard to explain to an American audience, but it's a great game. It's really fun. And so I've got this team. My mates and I have been playing in this team for 21 years now. So we're really good mates, been mates forever. This particular night, we won the grand final. I was like, this is great, like best night ever. Got home all excited, and my wife was sitting there on the end of the bed, and she says, Brett, we need to talk. And I went, just, when you know someone, you've been with someone for a while, and there's just that tone of voice, and you're just like, oh, cow, okay, this is serious. And she straight out just saying, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And I had no inkling that it was coming. Like, I just had no concept of it. And so it was just this like, bang, I think one of the quotes I used in the book was the Mike Tyson one where he says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And that was me, right? It was like, bang, oh, far out, what just happened? And my wife had she'd been thinking about it for a long time. So this had been like months in the making for her. And obviously I was naive to the facts. So, she was already a fair way down the journey. So within about 3 days, she was like, I really want you to move out. Within, I think 3 weeks, I had to find my own place. And so just this, just everything just turned upside down. And I just felt really lost, up until that point, my whole sort of thinking had always revolved around just family, everything I was doing was wanting to create this great environment for my family, great environment for my kids, and, the house, the job, everything, and so it just felt like it had just been pulled out from under me. And I just felt really lost. Like I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing anymore. That was kind of the biggest thing. Like I'd go into practice and be like, why am I here? What am I doing? I'd be doing the podcast just like, what am I doing this for? Like, what's the point? It's not getting me where I wanted to go. What do I do now? And so everything just fell in a heap. And the funny thing is, I was about to say that was my rock bottom, but it wasn't. And so the rock bottom for me came after that, because as I said, I'd been in this sort of personal development space for a couple of decades by then. I'd been starting young and constantly just, because of this over analytical mind I've got, just delving in, trying to learn stuff. And I've always been a problem solver. Like I love problem solving. I love, trying to fix stuff and build stuff. And so I just kind of, turned on my male brain and thought, well, okay, this is a problem. I just need to fix it. And I've got all these tools I've learned over the last 20 years, and I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to fix it and I'm going to make it work. And so I went into that massively, over analyzing space. And coming from a space where I was feeling really like a failure, and I was feeling really low, and I was feeling really kind of self-depreciating. And so as a result, I just took like 100% of the blame for everything that had happened, and was just like, okay, well, I've obviously stuffed up. I've done this. And so I just like went in trying to find all the things that I'd stuffed up and what I had to do about them. And that was what really took me to a dark place. Like I remember I read a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which was probably a really good book, but it was just like the right book at the wrong time. And it just like took me down into this place of just like beating myself up. And that was my rock bottom.
Can I ask you why you took on, because a lot of people do this, Brett, you took on 100% of the responsibility, because at a conscious level, I think everybody knows that if you're having some kind of a conflict with the other person, it's very rarely 100% one side and zero the other, even though perceptions might make it feel that way for one or the other, or even on the outside. But it's usually some shared responsibility, maybe not equally shared, but obviously she thinking about this for a while. You had just come from this highest of high, winning this indoor cricket championship, coming home, and you're at this high, and then she just kicks you off your pedestal, and that rock bottom hits a lot harder when you're higher.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
were already, and I wonder how much of that played into you spiraling a bit, because you were already so high that when this just knocked you off kilter, you just went, whoa, like Buster Douglas just hit Mike Tyson in the face and down he goes. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that's
And I think
for those.
there's a lot of truth in that. Like I think, a big part of me getting to the point where I got to was because I was so like obsessed with kind of personal development and obsessed with like being happy and obsessed with doing everything right, that that high was probably a bit of a mirage, like it was like that thing of like trying to always people please, trying to always do the right thing by everyone else, trying to be perfect and create this perfect kind of what was probably an artificial high, and it's that inability to see the shades of grey, that kind of black and white thinking that I think just leaves you ready for the fall, like at risk of the fall, because you're not seeing the yin and yang of life. You're not seeing the duality of life. You're kind of just trying to, and I think this came into then my solution around it. Like I was just trying to always see the positive and trying to always see the solution and trying to always see the fix and so, so when it all went wrong, I was like, well, okay, well, now I need to just be positive about that and figure out what I need to do and how I need to fix it. And, this is not a problem, I can fix it, kind of thing. Like, it's like I was so busy trying, I guess, not to be wrong or not to be a failure or not, that I was like, oh, I just got to fix it, and I think part of that was that kind of people pleasing nature of like, it's almost like I wanted to fix it before anyone found out, and so it was that kind of mirage, like that sort of keeping up appearances was, I think, came into it a little bit as well. And I think you do as a, as someone who has a public profile, you do feel a little bit of pressure around that sometimes, that you're like, well, people are looking up to me, people want you to lead the way and show the way. And I think when you're younger and more naive, you think the way to do that is by showing that it's good all the time. And as you get older and wiser, you realize that's totally not what people want to or need to see.
Dude, one of my favorite things to do now is to show vulnerability, is to show a side of my humanity that then relates to other people. Because you're right. I mean, as influencers, as people with followings, as people who listen to us, I think we do them a great disservice if we make it look like kumbaya, everything's perfect, utopia all the time, and
Yeah.
never show them the dark side, because then they're like, well, what's wrong with me? I feel like crap. Why do they always seem to have it put together? And it
Yeah.
presents this illusion that we have it put together. And I'm gonna break news here on Real Talk today. Jimmy Moore and Brett Hill are not perfect.
Definitely not perfect. And like, yeah, it's like I can't even handle people saying it like anymore. Like, it's like, as soon as someone says like, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, it's like you've got to understand, because yeah, you're right. Like it does. I think John DeMartini talks about this a lot. Like they can't have the good without the bad. He explains it really well, I think. And I think it's a great reminder every time you sort of come across it that there is that balance and there is that duality. And like you said, when you have those big highs, then often that means you have the big lows as well. But if you're able to see the black and white of life, that nothing is ever up here and nothing is ever really down there either. It's always somewhere in between and shades of grey. And I think as a society generally, and I think social media plays a big part in this, that we have become a very dualistic society where like everything is either right or wrong, good or bad. And as the keeping up appearances thing, all you see is the good side of people on their social media accounts most of the time. Sometimes you see really bad sides of people on their social media accounts too. But but there is that polarity, I reckon, that you see, and people then can find a community of people who kind of think just like them and have that little echo chamber as well, which just accentuates it even further. So yeah, I think that shades of grey is something we've got to get back to understanding that nothing's really good or bad. That there's a truth in between somewhere there.
And quite frankly, women are a lot better at this than us guys, which is why I love that you're a guy that wrote this book.
I hear that a lot.
A lot of guys are unafraid to articulate the things you articulated in your book, Brett. And so I resonated with that so much because you and I are almost on the exact same wavelength about philosophy of life. How old are you now?
I'm 41 just the other
You're
day, 6 days ago. I had to think about it then.
So by the time this airs, I will be 49. So yeah, in that kind of same age range. And so as you get older, I think once you hit 40 as a guy, you're just like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's so refreshing because guys, especially, if they hit rock bottom, they will suppress it and not act like anything's wrong because it's unmanly to show any kind of emotion. It's unmanly to not change or to try to change things. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? That you just be who you are and you'll just suck it up, buttercup, and move on with your life. And I think that's a horrible message.
Yeah, I do too. And I find it quite ironic. Like I think masculinity is a really good and healthy thing. Like I think masculinity gets a bad rap in our modern society as well. So I don't want to like go down that path. But I think there's a healthy masculinity that we need to look for. And I think that that kind of masculinity that is, well, no, I just need to bury everything and not talk about it and just soldier on. I think that is where it can get unhealthy when it goes too far in that direction. But I think one of the most masculine things you can do is be strong enough to stand up in your truth and say, lay the cards on the table. Like, this is where I'm at and I'm okay with it. And I'm going to get myself back on track. I don't need your pity. I don't need anything. I got this sorted, but I just want you to know this is where I'm at, and like that is just so strong and masculine. I think that's the side of masculinity that I think maybe we've lost a little bit. Although I don't like using the word lost because I really firmly believe that it exists in every man out there. And it just needs to be refound. So I don't think it's lost. I think it's there. And this is one of the things I was really big on with my book. Like people come up to me and say, it's so good that you're a guy and you talk about this stuff and most men aren't capable of doing it. And I'm like, no, stop saying that. Like this is part of the problem.
Yeah.
All men are capable of doing it. You need to give them a chance. And part of the problem is we've created a society where we don't make it okay for them to do it. There's so much pressure on men to be everything now. I think we went through a stage where there was so much pressure on women to be everything. Now there's so much pressure on men to be everything. And you've got to be the masculine guy who never has a problem, but you've also got to be the feminine guy who does the whole other side. And you've got to be everything in between. And the pressure on guys is massive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say lost, maybe dormant.
Yeah, good word.
Sleep inside of you, just waiting to be woken up. And guys, if you read this book, you're going to wake up that dormant side. So I promise.
And it was fascinating. Like the first time I spoke about this, was on stage at one of our wellness events. I think it was 2016. And it was the first time I'd spoken about it. And so I got it. And the talk I did was like the shrunk down version of this book, right? So this book kind of evolved out of that talk because at the time I did the talk, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. And so I got up and I was like, I just shared my story and I was like, just laid it all out there. And was like, this is where I've been. This is what I've been doing. This is what happened. And the reaction was just off the charts. Like, I don't know what your audience is like. Our audiences are like 95, 97% female in the health world. And it seems to be pretty common that's a number that's out there. What's it like over there?
Mine's about 75-25 female to me.
Yeah, okay. There you go. So I did this talk and like every guy in the audience came up and spoke to me and I kind of expected that a little bit, that they would relate to that story. But what amazed me was all of the girls came up and they're like, oh my God, now I get it. That makes so much sense, or I so understand, or I feel where you're coming from, and so it really was, an opportunity as well for the girls in the audience to be like, now I see the other side that's just there waiting to come out, and how I can create an opportunity for that to happen as well. So I think it's an important perspective that we don't hear often enough. And that was what made me realize that, okay, I need to do something with this story. Like I need to write a book now because the response was just off the charts. So I was like, all right, this is an important message.
By the way, every good book idea comes from a condensed version in spoken. Keto Clarity, actually, was that way. You heard me speak about it in 2020, and then 2 years later I had the book. So that every good book, that just little tip for you potential authors out there. If you have an idea and it resonates, run with it. So like How to Eat an Elephant, that was your previous book.
That was one of my previous books. Yeah, my most recent one before that was Nourish Without Nagging, which is all about how to get your kids to eat healthy.
That's
so
right.
They're all
eat a low carb show so many times. I'm trying to keep. Although I've got 9 books, I can't talk. So
I know, right? I got a bit of work to do. I got 8 years to get 6 more.
There you go. I wrote 7 in 7 years.
Oh my God, that's impressive. That's impressive.
I took a break this year because homeboy needed a break. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what happens when you hit rock bottom, and I want to hear the happy ending here in a minute, but I'm trying to hold it a little bit. But when you hit rock bottom and there you are left with nothingness in your head, in your heart, you said you lost your passion. You were just going through the motions of life. And why am I doing this? That relates with so many people. That's where people are. Is that the sign you've hit rock bottom, that just life just doesn't seem, it seems like you're in another world while everybody else is moving on with their lives? You just feel like you're stuck in slow motion and nothing real.
And you know, the other, and like some bits were like in slow motion and some bits were like in overdrive, you know, like, and the bits that were in overdrive for me was like the good things. So like, you know, things like eating healthy and exercising, and I just like went like into overdrive on those things. So it's like even the good things I was doing unhealthily. Like, not because anything I did wasn't healthy, but because my mindset around why I was doing what I was doing was unhealthy. So I was kind of like beating myself up with food and beating myself up with exercise and, you know, like just trying to, I'm sure in some part of it, trying to control what I can control, you know, but I think for me, the rock bottom, the point where I got to was just like, it was literally just like physically, mentally, it was like the fuse had just gotten to the end and it was like, okay, like I either change something or everything's just going to like boom, you know. It was just at that point where I'm like, you know, it's change or, you know, it felt like it was like change or die. Like I don't think I was literally going to die, but that's what it felt like. It was just like, if I don't do something different now, I don't know what's going to happen, you know. And so that for me was like, okay, something has to change. That was my rock bottom.
And I think that's what paralyzes people. They get to that point, Brett, and the indecisiveness about what do I change. I think what I'm hearing you say is just change something, because what you're doing is leading to a destructive path. Go in some direction, and it might be the wrong direction, but go in that direction for a bit. Try to figure things out and see if that's the answer. If it's not, go another direction. Go another direction. Pull yourself out.
And I would say even, I think the first thing you need to change needs to be on the inside. Because for me, when I try to change everything, like I try and do the exercise, or I try and do the food, or I try and do the, you know, personal development or the analysis, or, you know, when it's not coming from the right place, when you're not feeling good about yourself, when you're not loving yourself, then you don't take loving actions, no matter which direction you're heading in. And so I think for me, it was about the first thing had to be, I had to get back to that point of loving myself, because it all had to come from, you know, I realized that without that, all of the actions were just making things worse. But if I could get back inside and sort of nourish myself from the inside out, then it was only then that kind of the fog started to clear and I could actually start to more accurately analyze what had happened. You know, because when you're hating yourself and you're trying to analyze what happened, well, of course, you're like, well, I did everything wrong. It was all my fault. You know, when you're hating yourself and you're trying to fix it, it's like, well, I just have to suffer to make it all better. You know, but when you're loving yourself and you go back to analyze it, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm half responsible for this, but I'm kind of half not responsible for this. You know, I'm 100% responsible for what I do next, but I'm only half responsible for what happened. You know, and so. And by the same token, when you start looking forwards and looking for what to do next, and you know, for me, it was kind of that stage of like, okay, first bit was the self-love. You know, the second bit was really rediscovering my purpose. And so it was only when I got to that stage of like loving myself enough to think that I was worth it, that then I could start to rediscover my purpose. And like, I can remember just this, And the funny thing about this is I can't remember where I was. I can't remember what I was doing. I can't remember anything else about the situation, but I can remember the thought and the feeling, which is really interesting anyway. But I can remember this thought and thinking, I can still be a good dad even though I'm divorced. And like, that is just like the most simple statement. And it like blindingly obvious, but that it took me, I had to love myself first before I could realize it. And then it was like, okay. So all those things my purpose from before, I don't have to chuck it out just because I'm divorced now. It's like I can still be focused on being an amazing dad. It's just different, and I can still be an amazing chiropractor, and it's just different. And part of my drive to do chiropractic and to do books and to do podcasts was that I was like, well, I want to create an amazing world for my kids to grow up in. Like, that was always my sort of thinking, was like, I want to make the world better because this is the world my kids grow up in. And so so then the next thing that dawned on me was like, okay, well, if my kids are only going to be with me 50% of the time now, then changing the world's even more important, because this is the world they're going to be in when they're not with me. And so, all of a sudden, so I was like, okay, so it's like nothing really changed that much in terms of my purpose, but it's like my thinking behind it changed. And I was like, all right, now I'm back. It's like, okay, now I know what I didn't know what I needed to do, but I knew why I needed to do it. And that was the most important thing.
And isn't it amazing how so much of our life is right here?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Nuts.
we live in our own heads. We allow other people's thoughts and ideas to get in our head. And then analytical people like Brett Hill and Jimmy Moore and ruminate.
Yeah.
Think.
And you think everyone's thinking about you when they're not.
Exactly. Don't be that bad. You're not that important. I don't care who you are. Except with a few exceptions around the world, but we'll leave that alone for now. But yeah, people overthink things, and all it took was just reframing in your mind, hey, I'm not such a bad guy. I'm a good dad. I'm a good chiropractor. I'm a good man. I have a reason to live, a purpose in my life. These are the things that ground me. And once you put the focus on the things that ground you, chaos can still happen, but you are solidly grounded in who you are and all that reframing in your head. So how do you get people to do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you talk about this a lot in the book, but there's a series of questions that I've put in there that you can sort of ask yourself to go through, of like, what lights me up? What wakes me up in the middle of the night? What makes me smile? Like what do I get out of bed for? Those are the hints, like the things that you just do regardless. There's a reason why you do that, and I used to talk to parents about this sort of stuff all the time, especially after like Nourish Without Nagging. And one of the key points I talk about in Nourish Without Nagging is like how to get the kids to love eating healthy, how to find out what motivates them rather than trying to share with them what motivates you, right? Because that doesn't work. And they'd say to me things like, well, my kid just likes playing computer games. And it's like, okay, but why does he like playing computer games? Is it because he's connected socially and he feels like he belongs? Is it because he's able to decompress? Or, what is it about the computer games that he likes? So it's about figuring out what is it that you do consistently. Why do you do that? What's the why behind that? Because that's your little hint to figure out what you care about, what gets you up, what gets you going, what gets you to take action. And when you can find that, then all of a sudden that whole chaos you're talking about, all those things, it's like when you know why you're doing it, then the choice becomes really obvious. It's like, oh no, it's that one, because that's the one that helps get me where I want to go. And it just, from that total confusion comes this just like clarity, maybe keto clarity.
And something else that does, Brett, is it lets you distill your life down to the bare necessities. And when you distill down and strip it down and see what it is that makes you tick, so to speak, you notice all these other things that you do that really don't matter, and you can let those go.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, saying no is a massive part of it, and that was a massive part of it for me, because a big part of my journey leading up to that point had been just being a massive people pleaser, just wanting to do the right thing, wanting to make everybody happy, wanting everyone to like me, And so there were so many things that I was doing to be nice or to be right or to be kind, or, and not saying I'm not nice or right or kind anymore, but but I've got better balance around that, and I understand now that the best way for me to be nice and kind to other people is to be nice and kind to myself. And that when I fill my own cup up, then it can flow on to other people in a more healthy way. And so it changes your perspective around what's important. And yeah, very often I think there is a big clean out that happens as a result of that. And sometimes that's physical, like you literally just want to clean everything, clear out your house, throw things out, reset, and often it's really mental as well. When you know what's important to you, then what's not becomes obvious, and the fact that it's kind of getting in the way of what's important becomes obvious, and that just makes things so. I often get told that I'm a simple guy, Jimmy. Marcus, who's my co-founder of the Wellness Couch, often introduces me as, this is Brett. I love him because he's just a really simple guy, and I love that because I know what I like and I like what I know, and and I'm happy with my little house in the hills and some fruit trees and going for a walk, and I don't need heaps of stuff to be happy. And that's one of the things I've learned about myself is just, I don't need to compare with anybody else, that I love my simple life and I'm totally okay with that.
Sounds like Marcus might be a little bit jealous of your simple life.
Well, yeah, he's just had his 4th child, so that might be true.
Now you have, was it 2 daughters?
No, I have 2 sons and a daughter now, Jimmy. So I have a son and a daughter from my first marriage who are now 9 and 11, about to be 10 and 12. And I now have a 10-month-old boy. So we've got a nice little age gap there, which is actually awesome. It's really, really cool.
Well, let's hear the happy ending, because you hit rock bottom 5 years ago, and you started doing this self-work, trying to start loving yourself, which then relit your passion for why you're living in this world. You started talking more about this publicly, which then led to Rock Bottom, the book.
Correct.
You met a girl, obviously, because you got a 10-month-old baby with her.
Exactly. Yeah. So I from there, then the next step is kind of, taking personal responsibility, and that's where that, you take 50% of the blame for what happened, but 100% of the responsibility for what's going to happen. And then the big follow on from that is taking action. I think sometimes people think, well, I've just got to think the right thoughts and it's all going to happen. But it's like without the action to follow the thoughts, then nothing happens, nothing changes. And luckily, the great thing that happens, Jimmy, is that when you've done the work, when you've spent the time and you've done the work and you've gotten to that point, then I think you're then ready for someone else who's done the work and has been through their own stuff and has worked through it to come into your life and find that right match at the right time. So, the amazing thing about that talk, Jimmy, was on the day I did that talk in 2016, on the day of the talk, I added in one last slide, which was kind of the finishing touches on the slide. And the reason I added that in was because 2 nights before that talk in 2016, I'd been on a date. And so I'd gone to Melbourne, which is, Eastern Australia. I'd gone there a couple of days early, and I was meeting up with Steph, who'd been a long-time photographer on our podcast network and for all of our live events. And we'd met up and had this dinner and this kind of very, juvenile, awkward date, and, walked through the park and went to kiss and then weren't sure because we were working together and how's that, and anyway, it all worked out amazingly well. And it was just one of those things where we kissed, we, spent some time together, and within the space of like 24 hours, it was just kind of, okay, well, this is it. It was just like, this is what's going to happen. And so my last slide that I added into my talk, which is also the last chapter of my book, is that you need to continue to believe in miracles, and one of my favorite quotes has always been, I choose to believe that the universe is conspiring to help me. And that's attributed to numerous people all over the internet. So, there's debate about who that has actually come from. But the thing I think about that is, I'm not a religious person. I'm not an overly spiritual person. I've always been a very pragmatic person. And so that quote, when I first read it, kind of grated me a little bit because I was like, oh, it's just too fluffy for me, And then someone explained it to me and they said, well, you've kind of got two choices, right? You either choose to believe that the universe is conspiring to help you, or you don't. If you do choose to believe the universe is conspiring to help you, it's going to help you see the opportunities that come your way, whether it's the universe or not. It's going to help you see the opportunities that come your way. It's going to help you take the opportunities that come your way. And as a result, you're probably going to have a better life. And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So it's like, I don't choose to believe the universe is conspiring to help me because of any sort of spiritual reason. I just choose to believe it because pragmatically, I feel like my life's going to be better if I choose to believe that. And it's just as likely to be right as not. So I may as well believe the one that's beneficial for my life. And so I choose to believe in miracles. And that was definitely a miracle, Jimmy. It's been, we've been now together for, it's 4 years. Yeah, that is. I was about to say, I looked at my calendar then. I was going to say 6 years, and my maths was out. And no, it is 4 years. And so yes, we've been together for 4 years now. We got married last year. Beautiful ceremony with the lovely Kim Morrison as our celebrant, who I mentioned in my book was one of my biggest helpers throughout the journey. And we now have a small boy. We have a house in the hills. We have a great life. And I think we have a much better perspective on the ups and downs. We have a lot more honest conversations. You know, if I'm not happy, I'll say it. If I'm happy, I'll say it. You know, we have a much better, deeper relationship because we're willing to share our wins and our challenges, and be there for each other through both.
Oh my gosh. And it sounds like you both have been through the rock bottom experience, which just
Very
is
much
so helpful to each other, but helpful to those kids. Can you imagine even your 10 and 12-year-old almost, and especially that 10-month-old, those kids are going to say, I had the coolest dad and stepmother and mother, because they loved me. It was obvious they loved me because of your love for each other, because of your appreciation with the shared hurt. And I think anyone who's kind of been put in that situation where they've hit rock bottom, you don't feel like you'll ever have a life again. And please be encouraged by Brett's story here today that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It should be the thing in your head right now that says, hey, it's dark now, but better days are coming.
Yeah. And apologies to all the people who are right in the middle of it right now, because you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to say it because it's true anyway. But like one day you look back at that moment, and I look back at my divorce now, and I honestly 100% say it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I say that from 100% integrity and truth. And it's absolutely true. And as I said, I know that's a horrible thing to hear when you're right in the middle of it. And it's the last thing you want to hear. But I know for those people who are starting to come out the other side, that can be a good thing to hear and a useful thing to hear as well. But it's true that those challenges make you who you are, you know. And I look back at the talks I was doing, the mentoring I was doing, the podcast I was doing before I got divorced, and I just think, wow, that was naive. Like, I have such greater depth now. I have such greater empathy now. I have such greater wisdom now. All of those things I gained from going through that experience that I know helped me just so much in my life, and I hope help other people in their lives. And I now have the perspective to be able to say to you, Jimmy, that my kids will love some things about me, and they will find some things about me annoying as shit. And then they'll no doubt tell their kids about all the things I did that just messed them up emotionally. And that's okay, because there's going to be good and bad, and I'm totally okay with that.
So the analogy I like to use is it's like going in for surgery. So when you go for surgery, you're cut open. So when you're cut open, it is an injury. It hurts. You feel it. It's all the everything. But what did they do when they got in there? They fixed that was wrong, and then they sewed you back up. Are you automatically out of pain? Are you automatically healed at that point? Well, the internal work might be done, but you're still feeling the pain of the surgery. And then, year later, you're like a new person. And so it's the same way that, yes, you might be in the midst of it, but it's good to hear somebody that's already healed up from their surgery to say, hey, look, the pain don't last. You're going to feel like a new person. Embrace it now. So no, I appreciate you sharing that word.
Yeah, and that's where the title of the book came from. It was a J.K. Rowling's quote, which was, rock bottom was the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. And it just was so appropriate and so apt. It was, when you finally get to that rock bottom, it's like, as much as it's painful, it's almost like a relief, because you get to that point and you're like, A, kind of like it can't get any worse from here. But B, you're like, okay, now that everything's gone, it's like I actually get to choose how I want to rebuild it. Like I get to choose what I want to add back in now. And so as much as it's a painful position to be in, it kind of flips into this like other side of it, which is like, oh, this is actually kind of liberating. Like I actually get to choose now rather than being driven by everybody else and everyone's thoughts and opinions. It was like I got pushed down so far that I just had to stop listening to all of that because it was just killing me. And it's like, I actually need to figure this out for myself. And it was freeing and liberating and inspiring to then be able to think, well, okay, this is where I now get to recreate my life.
And that's the best part of rock bottom is the next step is blank slate.
Yeah.
And you can
absolutely
want to be, you can live however you want to live, pursue the things that maybe before you were held back because you were caught up in living that life that was your life, going through the motions of life. And then you look back on it now and it was so superficial compared to who you are now. Like, I think
even just the funniest little things, Jimmy. Like I remember getting my apartment and I was in this like tiny little apartment and there was like no backyard and I was like, oh, I just miss my house, you know. But then I was like, my favorite like sports poster that I'd never been able to put on the wall and I'm just like hanging it on the wall, you know. It's like, hey, this is not so bad. You know, like just these little things of like recreating your life and you're just like making dinner and I'm just going to play whatever music I want as loud as I want. You know, and just these little things that sort of come back in where you're like, hey, there's some good side to this too, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to keep the perspective in the midst of rock bottom is do things that you've always wanted to do. What's holding you back? You were the only one holding you back. You do it. Be uninhibited.
One of the obscure things that I did at that point was I actually wrote a list of all of the things I was kind of missing and craving from the relationship. So I'm like, okay, I'm here, I'm by myself. And I realized that if I was still missing and craving all those things to that degree, then I was going to be like a really needy person. And likely the next relationship I got into was going to be really unbalanced, you know. So I wrote this list out of all the things that I was missing or needing or craving. And then I tried to like rule a line down the middle and I tried to figure out ways that I could do that for myself. And so this is one of the sort of self-love things that I did, was actually sat there and thought, well, okay, well, you know, and like silly things, like it was like, you know, I wanted to go out dancing. So like I missed going out dancing. I'm like, that's fine. I'm just going to go out dancing by myself. And I'd go out to the nightclub by myself. I'd literally be there with my eyes shut, just dancing till like 3 a.m, having the time of my life, not giving a shit what everyone else thought. Or, you know, it was like I'd go to dinner by myself. I'm like, I miss going out on a nice dinner. So I'm just going to take myself out to dinner. I went to movies by myself. I was like, this is actually great. Like, there's nobody asking me about the plot line. Like, who was that guy? What's going? I could just sit back and I could enjoy the movie. It was fantastic. You know, the funny one, the one that I always tell everyone, because you're in the spirit of sharing and being open. The one that's kind of slightly embarrassing that people always think is funny was I missed hugs, right? And you know, I'm a big hugger. You and I are both big huggers. So I bought myself one of those like full-length bolster pillows. And so I just go to bed each night, just like hugged up to my bolster pillow. And it was great. Like it was exactly what I needed at that time. So even though it's embarrassing and even though I know everyone laughs at me when I say that, it's like I did it, it worked for me and I don't care. It was great.
That's so interesting that you took a list of all the things you missed about your relationship and you created a self-sufficient resolution to it. Not the same as hugging one life or not as, you know, having conversation at dinner, because it would be weird if you were sitting there, Brett. Yeah, so I had a great day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sure
well,
did.
I'm such an introvert. I'm quite happy not having conversation at dinner, so that's fine by me.
See, I have a problem because I'm very much an extrovert and very much need that interaction with people. And so you're convicting me a little bit to kind of look inwardly and say, okay, what can I do to fix those needs? Because you're right. You don't want to bring that into a new relationship that then suddenly they're like, why are you so clingy? Why are you so that?
And it's the ultimate act of self-love. You know, it's actually doing something to show yourself that you love yourself. And so as much as anything, I think it was the conscious decision to do it as much as it was the actual action was what made the difference. Because it was like I was doing it because I was showing myself that I loved myself and I deserved it. And that was actually that kind of start of that feedback loop that enabled me to start to sort of rediscover that self-love as well. So it was that action as well as the action behind the thought that I think made the big difference.
Guys, I hope you are hearing the heart of this man right here, because he did hit rock bottom. And these days he is doing so much better. He has been a great personal friend to me in the midst of some difficult things that I've been going through this year. So thank you for that. I want to thank you. Behind the scenes, I've got some really cool people in my life that kind of keep me grounded and give me perspective that maybe I'm not thinking about. Because when you're in that difficult situation in your life, it's hard to think clearly, and you know from firsthand experience.
Absolutely. And once again, coming from that empathy I spoke about before, I had some people in my life who were just unbelievable for me. I mentioned Kim Morrison earlier, my dear friend JC, some of those two girls in particular, but many other people as well, were just fundamental, just because they were there. And this is, I think, the really big message is it wasn't really about anything they did or anything they said, even though both of them are incredibly wise and gave me lots of love and gave me the right nudges at the right time and the right kicks up the bum at the right time. But more than anything, it was just the fact that I knew they were there and I knew they cared. And so, if you've got someone in your life who's struggling through their own rock bottom, you don't have to fix them. You don't have to fix it for them. You don't have to do anything for them. They just need to know you're there. And if you can do that for someone else, I was so blessed to have those people do that for me. And I think that really has given me the perspective to understand and to sort of to see when I can help do that for someone else and to see the value in doing that from someone else and to realize that it's, I kind of feel like it's like my responsibility to pay that forward because, it was such a massive blessing in my life how could I not share that? And why would I not want to share that? It's just such a beautiful thing. So, maybe you should be thanking JC and Kim, Jimmy.
I think if we go down the line of doing that, then we have to thank whoever helped JC and Kim. Over those people were, love the pay it forward concept. I do it all the time professionally. People are always coming to me. How do I write a book? How do I do a podcast? How do I build a brand? I help them. I don't even hesitate because I've been blessed. And so this is no different.
Well, that's why I labeled you the biggest heart in the business, Jimmy. And I'm sure I created that phrase. I know I've seen you use it since then, which is very cool. But you've always been very giving and very kind, and it was very obvious from the first time I met you. So it's a pleasure to be able to repay some of that.
And thank you. And thank you for being a great friend. Again, guys, Dr. Brett Hill, go check him out over on Instagram, where he does post his regular podcast. I was trying to see if I found one where you announce
a lot of the podcasts go to the This Week in Wellness Instagram as well. So there you go. Look at that. That's both of them. That's the old school and the new school.
Well, thank you. 3 million all-time downloads. Wow. 3 million. You all.
Not quite Jimmy Moore level, but we're a bit smaller down here in Australia. So
you're a big fish in a small pond, I guess, if you're going to small.
Yeah.
Actually, you guys rank pretty well in America with your podcast. This Week in Wellness is in the top 100 of health podcasts.
Oh, see, I need to check that. I didn't know that. I need to check that out.
Tabs on you, like you probably watch Living La Vida Low Carb Show and wants to see where I'm at. I'm watching you too, man. You're consistently in there. When it was wellness, guys, it was always in the top 100 of American health podcasts.
That's cool. I like that.
But guys, go get Rock Bottom. Rock Bottom. Cool guy. And the thing I love about you now is you're a much more rich guy. I always thought you were pretty deep. You're not a simpleton to me. You've got some depth to you that's deceptive. And so if you look for it, Marcus, is there, and you're definitely a lot more deep now. So thank you so much for who you are. Keep doing what you're doing. And by golly, I don't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for just anybody to do a podcast. Recording 4:30 a.m. for me, which was 8 p.m. for Brett.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'm doing well. I was up early for a run this morning too, so I'm ticking along now. It's good. I'll sleep well tonight. But
yeah.
and I was going to say, Jimmy, for people, you've got the hard copy of the book there, obviously. But for people in the States, obviously they can get the ebook as well. So they can get the ebook off my website or off of Amazon as well. So if they don't want to sort of get the hard copy shipped out, then they can get the ebook there as well.
So is that rockbottombook.com.au?
If they go rockbottombook.com.au, they'll find the hard copy and they'll find a link there to grab the ebook if they want to grab the ebook instead. Or like I said, if they want to go through Amazon, they can do it there as well.
Amazon America?
That's a good question. I think it is. I think it's both.
I think
I need to check that.
America the other day in the paper, or also drbretthill.com. You also have links there, right?
It's all there. Yeah, exactly.
You make it very easy to find you. So JimmyMoore.com. JimmyMoore.com is like an opera singer. You come on and the first thing you hear is, ah! It's like, nope, that's not me.
There you go. I can see it. I can picture it.
No. Well, Brett, thank you so much, and keep being you. Love you, man, and we'll talk to you again.
Jimmy. See you, mate. Can't wait till we can get you back down to Australia.
Someday.
One day.